I thought as a final kind of video, I could walk you through a general process of trying to do some bug hunting in Android to sort of show how I would generally go about looking into an application if I were doing some research into one. So the very first thing is before I decompile an APK, I'm going to install Drozer and I'm going to try the following things. I'm going to run the attack surface command against the application to see what different attack surfaces exist. If I see that there are activities that are exported and that there are scanners that are exported, or rather content providers that are exported, I'm going to try to start every activity to see what that gives me. If that gives me something that looks to be vulnerable or looks to be a problem, then I've already found some problems, right? And then I'm going to also run this injection command to see if any SQL injections exist. If they do exist, then we've already found a problem, right? So these are some very good low-hanging fruits that we can try to pick off when they're available, right? So then aside from this, we can also try decompiling the APK. And there are a few things that you should generally be looking for when you decompile an APK. There's actually one other thing that I'm going to add here to the end so that we can remember to discuss it, which would be load URL. But starting with these ones, execute SQL, right? Query, raw query. These three functions are always typically going to be used to execute SQL. We should always look at them with great scrutiny to determine if they're using parameterized queries or if they're doing something unsafe. If we see something unsafe that we can potentially reach with user input, this gives us a place to potentially try to attack. So these are really great to try to search for. In general, most applications are going to have some form of database query. If we can find these database queries, we could potentially do something harmful, which is important to be able to determine in an application. The next thing is going to be to look for log.something. So it's usually log.d, log.e. If you just type in log dot, you'll be able to find anything that has log being extended with some form of method, right? These are really important because they can tell us what sort of information is being logged by the application. This will be able to let us easily pick off any sort of debug messages or error messages that could expose something sensitive. We just need to determine how to get down that branch of code, and then we'll be able to expose those log values easily. The next thing is going to be to search for password. In general, most people aren't going to hard code passwords, but just in case that they do, password could be a good thing to search for. If you see password equals something in plain text, then you've obviously found some sort of problem. So that's always a good one to search for. Shared preferences is a really good thing to look for. This will be any of the shared preferences files. If we're writing to shared preferences, odds are that data is not going to be secure. If we can see what kind of data is being written and we see that it's something that should be treated with security, shared preferences is going to be a good way to show that, right? Same with create temp file. If something's being created in the temp file that, again, has some sort of data in it that's supposed to be secure, then we could potentially expose that, right? So this is a good thing to look for as well to see what kind of data gets written to temp files. Exec is a general sort of command that's used by Java to execute command line type arguments. And there's a few different ones that exist, some that exist specifically for Android as well. If you ever see command line being run with a user input, you might be able to get command injection, which is a very severe vulnerability. So I typically look for these and look for any instances where user input is being allowed in them. If that ever happens, we want to try to test that to see if we can do some sort of command injection on it, right? And then, of course, the load URL, because as we learned, we can load URLs. We can load files through the load URL function. So if we ever get the opportunity to get data into load URL, we might be able to load a specific file utilizing that. So this is something to always look out for as well. So in general, through these videos, you should have a pretty good understanding of how to hunt for vulnerabilities in Android and how to be able to expose those vulnerabilities through decompiling as well as utilizing tools like Drozer. In general, this should give you a little bit of an overview towards the general flow of what we typically look for in vulnerabilities and how we typically go about looking for them, how someone like me would go about looking for a vulnerability if I'm searching for one. So this should give you some good information to be able to get out there and start bug hunting in Android, whether it be your own applications or looking for bug bounties or testing other people's applications. This will give you a good solid set of foundations to be able to try out some vulnerabilities and learn all sorts of new stuff with this using sort of like a good foundation.